Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Elliot and today I'm going to be talking to you about the companies that know the most about you based on the data that's collected through their apps. So personal data collection and the associated risks of that information getting into the wrong hands have really come into kind of sharp focus over the last few years. Um, and it's been really brought into the spotlight by the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and more recently, the concerns over TikTok sharing user information with the Chinese government. And that is a serious concern. At the end of the day, once you submit your personal information, you can't say for certain how it's going to be used, possibly even misused, as well as the broader intent that people who have your data, companies that have your data, might have in the future. However, providing this sort of personal information has become part of really the everyday trade-off that we make just to use these basic apps. So before I carry on, if you do like these videos, don't forget to press the subscribe button below and press the little notification bell so you'll find out first every time I post a new video. So anyway, kind of cookie pop-ups are a huge part of this kind of trade-off, where when we visit websites, most of us 90% of the time will just simply click that kind of accept button that shows up at the bottom or at the top of a page on this kind of cookie banner. Um, we'll often do this without reading any of the associated information with it, simply so that we can get to the website sooner. And it's basically become second nature to click on the accept button without even looking at any further information as to what data they're collecting. And but really, what do these pop-up banners and accepting the terms of these pop-up banners really allow companies to do? And what information are we giving up when we're clicking on um, that small accept button? So the types of data that companies can legally collect often ranges from the simply obvious to the outstandingly obscure. Um, Obvious examples being your name, date of birth, email addresses. They're all kind of standard fields that need to be completed when signing up to a new app or to a new account with a website. But some of the more obscure data that companies kind of collect can be your pets, your hobbies, your height and your weight, and even really what you like to get up to in the bedroom. Um, and some of these apps even store your bank details and even link to your social media profile, so they can kind of understand you even better than often you do. You and your closest family do yourself. Um, so once they've collected all this data, what they kind of do with that information can range heavily depending on who the company is and kind of what their intent is behind how they run the business. And luckily for us, the team over at Clario, which is a cybersecurity company, they've conducted some research into the types of data that each company collects, as well as ranking each based on the categories, really in a nice and simple table, which I will show you now. Whilst this table gives you a good idea as to what's going on, it's not the full story. There's a whole host of usage insights that go into understanding this in-app data. Um, and there are also associated data trails that kind of link between some of these apps that can provide these companies with a much greater insight than you'd first imagine. So, what does all of this information mean? Well, first and foremost, unsurprisingly, social media and in particular Facebook are the top data collectors. Um, and Facebook in particular, as that kind of top social media network, depend on you giving them access to your details. So they can recommend friends to you, so people know it's your birthday, suggest groups for you to join, and most importantly to their business model so that they can advertise to you. If you take a look at any of the latest investor reports for Facebook, um, any of the other kind of social media companies, I mean, I'm using Facebook as an example because they're the biggest, and this is a greater example of kind of where this information is used. But as part of Facebook, ads are a huge part of how Facebook makes their money. Without ads, they wouldn't be anywhere near as big as they are now. And around $16.6 billion, but that's obviously based on the 2018 reports, is simply earned by Facebook through advertising. And without your personal data, they wouldn't be able to attract that sort of money to their ad platform. So, put simply, the more that social media networks and other advertisers really know about you, the more that they can sell on. So, alongside kind of the usual that when you sign up, your name, your location, your email address, date of birth, these social media networks will often collect a whole host of other things, um, often that you might not realize that you've kind of given away. And what the team at Clario have done is they've kind of given out an overview of all the information that can legally be collected, and they've put a percentage on what each of these 48 companies, um, they've given each one a percentage of how much of all that legal information each company collects. And Facebook sits very much at that top with 70.59% of the legal information available to it that it does collect. And equally unsurprising, really, is that Instagram comes second. Now, what's really unsurprising about this is that not only is Instagram a social media platform, but it's also owned by Facebook. Um, so again, Facebook, if you've got Facebook and Instagram and you're on the same email address, which you more than likely are, Facebook will have you linked that you're the same person, and they'll be able to attribute both your likes, dislikes across both platforms, just basically adding more information to what they can use and sell about you. So Instagram collects 58.82% of all that available data, and that can include everything from hobbies, height, weight, sexual orientation. And like their owner, most of this information is used for advertising and recommending accounts that you should really follow. So on to kind of the less social media account profiles, I suppose. So Tinder uses your pets to get you a date. So 55.88% of all that available legal information that can be collected is what Tinder collects. And part of the obvious part about being a dating profile, so height, age, sexual orientation, interests, and even if you have a pet, and to make it easier to upsell their premium products to you, Tinder also hold your bank account details. So whilst they're kind of gathering all this information, they're also kind of linking into your social media platforms as well, so that they can link your accounts and store your flirty messages that you send through the Tinder app as well. Simply so that they can target you more effectively with adverts and products. Again, very much in that kind of, you're giving something away, so you're going to get advertised to. And part of when I was reading through this especially, was that very much retail therapy doesn't cost you all of your data. I was personally very surprised at that. I thought that retail would be a lot higher on this list. So retailers such as Amazon use the least amount of data and collect the least amount of data on each of the people. So Amazon in particular, despite being the biggest online retailer in the world, and also spending about $11 billion somewhere around there, solely on advertising in 2019, they actually only collect a fraction of the data that social media platforms such as Facebook do. So Amazon collects 23.53% of the legal information available that they can collect. Um, so beyond the kind of the obvious information like your name, your email address, home address, and bank details that you've bought items through Amazon, so those details are there. Um, it really collects very little else to actually run its business. Um, a lot of the other information that's collected um, is how you really use its site, which has been really key to how Amazon um, has grown its business, simply by understanding its consumers better than anyone else in the market. They're able to suggest to you better products, as well as streamlining their processes by understanding the sticking points that a lot of the consumers have within, obviously, their web domain. And general retail as well has come lowest on the list of kind of all these 48 companies. IKEA at 23.53%, Nike at 26.47%, and Depop at 26.47%. All store your name, email address, and home address, along with your bank details, so that you can make online purchases easier. However, these fashion companies, Nike and Depop, also store your height and weight, simply to help target you with more appropriate clothing. So, what you might be unsurprised to hear from a company that every year posts the most songs listened to and your personal year in review, but Spotify uses your social media platforms to decide what you should listen to. Um, so, among its 35.29% of information that it collects, Spotify connects to your social media platforms to understand your interests and your hobbies. So if you've ever been to a concert and shared a photo of it on Instagram, you're more than likely going to have found that within the next however many weeks of listening to Spotify that same band appears in your recommendations. And rather less surprising is obviously that they track what music you listen to. Um, this allows them to create playlists of music that you like, the end of year roundups that I mentioned earlier, and as well as kind of being able to look back on the last 12 months of hits and misses. This is very much similar to how kind of Netflix work as well. So Netflix track the kinds of shows that you watch, so it can recommend similar titles. Gives programs a match rating to what you'd so seeing how likely you are to like a program, and the data it gathers is really designed to give you that better user experience, meaning that you'll keep coming back and again to see more of the shows that it's found for you. And really, this is part of the reason that Netflix don't have you rank films in order of kind of how high you rate them when signing up. It was very much found early on in user testing that films such as Shawshank Redemption, Silence of the Lambs are highly rated in general, but people would be more likely to then watch guilty pleasure sitcoms instead, rather than these kind of highly rated films. And so, rather than kind of aiming to sell you a product or advertise to you, Spotify and Netflix are just really good examples of collecting data. People don't mind, and that they are pretty much solely using to better your experience when using their systems and their apps. The kind of the least surprising stat for me reading this information is that out of the 48 companies that Clario asked to provide what data they gathered. 93.75%, so almost 94% of companies have your email address. They will either request this when you're setting up the account, or kind of down the line when you're making purchases or things like that. And these are often stored for future marketing or to stay in touch, and is really the basic information and data that a company asks for when obviously creating accounts or signing up to new apps. And any brand that you've signed up for, any social media account you've got, or even any shop that you've bought from, will have your email address on file. And while they might never use it, they can use it to send you weekly emails that you'll either find really interesting or that will just be condemned straight to your junk mail. Obviously, without seeing the list of apps that were asked beforehand, I was quite surprised that 18% of companies know how much you weigh. It's kind of it's that one question that you should never ask on a date, but obviously 18% of these companies know that answer already. And once you've kind of looked into the apps that are on this list, there are some brands where it makes sense. So Slimming World, Strava, Nike, Depop, they all want to know it for obvious reasons. They're either trying to help you keep track of your weight, or they're using it to suggest better clothing options. The ones that I didn't quite understand were why Credit Karma and Instagram ask for that information. And quite frankly, I still don't know. So what you might be thinking after kind of listening to this video or watching this video is, can our data come back to haunt us? And given the huge kind of wealth that we really unknowingly share with businesses, it's no surprise to see some things that are revealed about us, really, that we'd much rather were kept private. However, thanks to GDPR, and I believe there's the CCPA, the California equivalent, and obviously there's some cyber security software that you can use. What companies can legally do with your data once they've collected it is actually really quite limited. Beyond tailoring marketing to you and using your data to manage their website, businesses really can't do a lot more. You shouldn't get cold calls from businesses you've never spoken to, or for example, if you find out your data is being sold, that shouldn't be happening either. And your data really is protected by the policies that companies, such as these social media companies, sign up for when they're initially gathering your information. And if they do break these policies, there are huge fines that they can face. You only have to look at the Facebook, Twitter, and in the last few years, Wonga loans as well. They've all been hit by huge GDPR lawsuits in numerous countries as well, which has had a massive effect on the way that each one of them goes about their own business as well. So don't forget, if you do like these videos, don't forget to press the subscribe button below and the notification bell, just so you'll be one of the first to know every time I post a new video. And why not drop me a comment about how much data you give, or how much data you trust companies to hold of yours. And I look forward to seeing you next time. I'll see you. Bye.